Okay, so we're going to find the roots of this quadratic, and finding the roots just means solving for x, figuring out the values of x that will make this equation a true statement. All right, so first of all, to solve any quadratic equation, that means an equation that has an x squared term, okay, like this one does. The first thing you have to do is get all the terms on one side and have 0 on the other side, all right, because we're going to use the zero factor theorem to solve this equation. This is how you solve quadratic equations. You use the zero factor theorem, which tells you that if you multiply a group of things together, some factors together, and the product is 0, it means that one of those factors has to be 0, because there's no other way to get 0 by multiplying than multiplying by 0. So one of the factors, if you have something like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all those things multiplied together, and it equals 0, then you know that either A is 0, B is 0, C is 0, D is 0. One of them has to be 0, okay? Because that's the only way you can get 0 when you multiply a bunch of things together. There's no other way to get 0 except that one of the factors must be 0. All right, so that rule, that idea, is what we use to solve a quadratic equation like this. All right, so I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides of this equation so that I can get everything on the left side. So I'm going to have x squared minus 3x minus 18 equals 0. And I put my everything in order, so my x squared term comes first, then my x term, then my constant, the negative 18. All right, so now I'm going to factor this. And we factor a quadratic trinomial by setting up 2 sets of parentheses. We choose the first terms in the parentheses by looking at the x squared term. What do you multiply together to get x squared? It would be x times x. And then you look at your constant term, and you're looking for 2 numbers that their product is negative 18 and their sum is negative 3. All right, so if you think about the multiples of 18, you've got 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, 6 times 3. So those are basically all the factors of 18. All right, so which 2 numbers could you get a sum of negative 3 if you put the right signs on them? Well, the only chance you're going to have for that is 3 and 6. If you have positive 3 plus negative 6, that's going to give you negative 3. And if you multiply positive 3 by negative 6, you get negative 18. So that's what you're looking for. 2 numbers whose product is negative 18 and whose sum is negative 3. So that's going to be negative 6 and positive 3. All right, so you have factored this quadratic. Now, you have 2 factors, x minus 6 and x plus 3. Remember, factors are things that are multiplied together. So you're multiplying x minus 6 times x plus 3. Therefore, they are factors. You have 2 factors multiplied together that give you 0. That means one of them has to be 0. Either x minus 6 is 0 or x plus 3 is 0. If x minus 6 is 0 and you add 6 on both sides, then x equals 6. If x plus 3 is 0 and you subtract 3 on both sides to solve for x, you're going to get x equals negative 3. So these are the 2 solutions to this quadratic right here. These are the 2 roots, all right? Negative 3 and 6. And if you want to go back and check and make sure that they actually work in the equation, you can do that. And it's always a good idea to check. So I'm going to try negative 3. If I put negative 3 into this equation, I'll have negative 3 squared, and make sure you put the parentheses around the negative 3 because you're supposed to square x, and x is negative 3, and the only way to square negative 3 is to put the negative 3 in parentheses and then put the square on the outside so that you know it means negative 3 times negative 3 because that's what x is. All right, then minus 18 is supposed to equal 3x, so 3 times negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, and then minus 18, and then 3 times negative 3 is negative 27. I'm sorry, negative 9. Whoops. I'm thinking of 3 cubed. Negative 9. All right, so 9 minus 18 is negative 9, so that works. Negative 3 is a root of this equation. If I try 6 down here, 6 squared minus 18 is supposed to equal 3 times 6. I just put 6 in for x, and here. That gives me 36 minus 18 is equal to 18, and that's true. So negative 3 and 6 are the roots of this quadratic. They actually work in the equation. They are the solutions of the equation, and we solved it by factoring. That's the only way to solve a quadratic. You factor it. First you get everything on one side, get 0 on the other side, factor the equation, and then by the zero factor theorem, you know that one of those factors has to be 0 because they multiply together to give you 0.